Welcome to Penn State Dickinson Law's Profiles and Leadership series. My name is Daryl Lim. I serve as the H.I.E. Montag Junior Chair and Associate Dean for Research and Innovation at the Law School. This series offers an unparalleled opportunity to glean insights from top leaders who serve in government, education, the private sector, and civil society. In each episode, we invite these leaders to reflect on their journeys and share skills, core values, and qualities that make them the leaders they are today. We're very pleased today to have Dean Treanor, who's Dean and Executive Vice President of Georgetown University Law Center, and he holds the Law Center's Paul Regis Dean Leadership Chair. Dean Treanor joined Georgetown in 2010 and was reappointed to serve a third term as Dean and Executive Vice President. Under Dean Treanor's leadership, Georgetown has hired 69 new faculty members, although I suspect perhaps as of today, maybe a few more.
I think that is true. That is true.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Triple the number of experiential offerings for students in its clinical, externship, and practicum programs, and experienced its most successful era of fundraising, accumulating in over $80 million in giving in the last fiscal year. Dean Treanor has worked to advance Georgetown Law's commitment to affordability and access. During his tenure, Georgetown has more than doubled financial aid, raised nearly $24 million for the law school's scholarship program for exceptional students with significant financial need, and launched the RISE program, which provides academic support for students from historically underrepresented groups. The Law School Center has also created the Early Outreach Initiative, which brings the Law Center's Dean of Admissions, current law students, and alumni into urban high schools across the country to encourage student interest in pursuing careers as lawyers. In keeping with Georgetown Law's motto, law is but the means, justice is the end, Dean Treanor has focused on increasing opportunities for students to pursue careers in public interest law. Dean Treanor has worked to develop Georgetown Law's world-class program in law and technology, a special interest of mine. Currently, the Law Center has 16 full-time faculty experts in law and technology and offers over 80 courses in this area. During Dean Treanor's tenure, the Law Center has established an Institute for Technology, Law and Policy, the Center on Privacy and Technology, the Technology Scholars Program, the Center on Inclusive Trade and Development, and the Georgetown Law Technology Review. And I was fortunate to have been able to participate in its recent symposium and was very impressed with what I saw. Georgetown's commitment to equity and inclusion is rooted in its founding as a Jesuit institution. Central to its commitment has been Dean Treanor's work to make Georgetown Law a more inclusive and equitable place. In 2021, Dean Treanor announced the launch of Georgetown Law's first ever Inclusion Council. Since its inception, the council has reimagined and made recommendations for the structure of the Office of Equity and Inclusion, including a hiring of a new Chief Diversity Officer. The council is also developing a long-term strategic plan for the Law Center and designing an approach to inclusive pedagogy across research and teaching for all faculty. W. Norton will publish his upcoming book, Fathers of the Constitution, Triumph, Tragedy, and the Creation of the American Republic. Before coming to Georgetown, Dean Treanor was Dean and Paul Fuller Professor of Law at Fordham Law School, where he began teaching in 1991. He also served in a variety of positions in the government, and we'll go into all these and more. Welcome, and so glad that you can join us.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's an honor to be part of this series. It's really wonderful what you're doing, Daryl. So, when you asked me if I would be part of this conversation, I was just delighted to accept, and I want to begin by applauding you. So,
Thank you very much. I want to talk about this exciting new initiative at Georgetown Law, the physical space, and in particular, the new academic building that's going to come up. Talk to us about the building, but also talk to us more generally about your vision of space and how that works for the community at Georgetown Law.
I think one of the things that we've seen is the nature of teaching has changed from when the law school building was built in 1973. So when the law school building was built in 1973, we had the paper chase model of classroom teaching. So all the classrooms are built 160 seats, stadium seating kind of going up. Faculty member is literally on a stage, so the kind of what we call the sage on a stage model. And that's the way we taught in 1973. Georgetown has the best clinical program, the best experiential education program of any law school in the country. And when the building was built, we didn't have any clinical programs in the building. So it was built for the way we taught in 1973. And that's changed. So we're now focused on having smaller first-year classes. Our goal is to have, originally when I came in, the first-year sections were 125 people. Our goal is to make them 50, 55, so less than half the size that they were before. So next year we'll have, of the 7 basic first-year classes, 5 of them, our hope is will be taught in that smaller size, and we hope that the year afterwards they all will be, and that has real value for the students. It gives the students more opportunity to talk, and it means that professors are going to be able to give midterms rather than just grading at the end of the semester. And it totally alters the dynamic. So we focused on that. That's the way we teach, but we don't have a building that allows that. So when you have 55 people or 50 people in a classroom of 160 with kind of banked seats, and then the faculty members on a stage, it doesn't promote dialogue, and the people are just kind of rattling around the room. So one thing that we wanted to do is to have classrooms that are of the size that we need when we teach today. So there will be 16 classrooms in the new building, and that will be their size. Some of them will be as big as 75, some of them will be 7-hour rooms, but 50 to 60 is the norm of the classrooms that we're building. We're going to have wonderful clinic space. So the clinic space, again, we've retrofitted our clinics into this building. A lot of them are in the basement, and it really impedes doing clinical education the way that you want to do it. The technology is not good. A lot of oral arguments now are done on Zoom. We don't really have the capacity to do that. We don't have a good place to meet with clients. We don't have a good place for teams to work together. So smaller classrooms, clinical space. When Georgetown was built in 1973, it was very much a commuter school. So people came to class and then they went home. Now we have overwhelmingly people want to be here all the time, and there's really not the space to permit that. So that's the other focus. There's a lot of student hangout space, beautiful terraces, spaces for informal conversation. We've got a great coffee shop on the first floor. So that's very exciting. And then the other is it's of the city. So when our building was built in 1973, it was really kind of turning away from the city. So the windows, for example, on the first floor are all slits. And we want to make it feel like this is of the city. So it's a very glass building. Students will be able to look out and see what's going on in the community, and people in the community will be able to see what's going on in the law school. And it includes the top 2 floors are going to be really spectacular views of the city, views of the Capitol. So again, same thing when we built our campus, we didn't take advantage of being in Washington, D.C. So our dorm, for example, the very top floor could have spectacular views of the Capitol, but the place where it has the best views of the Capitol is where the mechanicals are. So to get the views of the Capitol, you have to risk your life. So those are the themes. We wanted to take advantage of being in Washington, D.C. We wanted to have smaller classrooms. We wanted to have clinical space, and we wanted to have space for students to gather informally. So that's the new building. It's very exciting.
It is exciting, and I should say for our viewers who have not been to the campus, it's a beautiful campus. It's probably the only law school campus I know that has a full floor dedicated to a gym,
Mm-hmm.
and also has a swimming pool.
Mm-hmm.
And
No, I have to say it's the best. I think it's actually the best gym that I've ever been to. So for any prospective students who are listening to your show, you get a great gym on top of a great legal
do you
education.
work out there
I do,
yourself?
I do. I think first of all, I think it's important that we focus on our physical health as well as our, intellectual growth. And then I think it's important that students see faculty and administrators as people. So they get to realize that they're much stronger and faster than I am when they see me in the gym. So I think there's a real value to that. And there's so many students over the years who I talk to, and they remember from our conversations in the gym. So I do that both for myself, but I think it's also very important for the community. So I try to work out. We have a great personal trainer program, and so I try to work out 3 times a week. I don't always do that, but at least twice. And I think it really makes a difference. So it's um, the Jesuit one of the core Jesuit educational principles. And as you said, I was at Fordham before I came to Georgetown. So really, my whole teaching career has been at Jesuit educational institutions, is to educate the whole person. So that's partly intellectual, but it's also emotional and physical. So we're focused on all of those things. So the gym is very important to us.
And I'm glad you would use the word community. One of the things that struck me at Georgetown is how big the community is. And it's a challenge, I think, when the community is beyond a certain size to have that sense of community without just being a mass of faces. And so when you shared the anecdote of being at the gym and students being able to connect with you, I think that's a huge testimony of how you've been able to balance the two. Uh,
Yeah, and actually, if I can just jump in on
sure,
that,
sure.
because that's an important point to me. One of the things that I've been very focused on is trying to promote community here. And Georgetown we're the largest school in the country. So between our JDs and our LLMs, we have about 3,000 students. So we are just hands down the biggest school in the country. We have a faculty of 150. So basically, our faculty is bigger than some law school student body. Uh, so there are a lot of advantages to that. It means, we were talking about technology and the fact that we have 16 people in the tech area. You can do that when you have a faculty of 150. You can't do that, obviously, in a smaller school. So that's very important to the richness. Any area that you want to explore, very deep. For a faculty member, if you're looking to have people to talk to in your area, they're here because we have 150 faculty members. But so that's the strength. But then the challenge is, how do you promote community, in a school of that size? So, and we do a lot of things, but that's one of the reasons why I'm so focused on bringing down the size of the first year section, because that really promotes community and friendships and personal contact. So that is a major focus of my time as dean.
That's a great intervention. I want to ask you a leadership question related to that and also a community question. So the leadership question first. When you're running a school of that size, how do you get a sense of the pulse of what's going on in the student body and the faculty, the administrators, so that when you make decisions as a leader of the school, you have all these relevant bits of information, but also the personalities and interests involved?
No, it's again a very important question, and in a lot of ways, we are of a size that's unlike any other law school, and we're like the size of a liberal arts school. So if you look at the great liberal arts schools like an Amherst or a Williams or a Pomona, we're much bigger than they are. So I give a lot of thought about how to establish contacts and build contacts with faculty members. As we're coming back from COVID, for example, I had small dinners at my house. So we invited everybody on the faculty, and we had them over in groups of 10. And it was really about, how are they feeling about coming back from COVID? How do we reestablish ties? So really about getting the pulse of the school. But it was also about having people getting to know each other. So I went around the table, and one of the questions I asked everybody to talk about was, who was your favorite teacher and why. So it was a terrific opportunity for people to share ultimately why they valued education and why they got into teaching. So I've also met with every faculty member one-on-one over the past year. So again, we have so many faculty. I think I'm actually up to T, so I'm not done yet. But I have a
You
commitment.
have time.
I have time. I have time. The goal is to get everybody done by May. Um, I have a senior staff meeting, and so every week I meet with the top administrators to talk about what's going on. We also have a senior administrator, senior staff council, and so I meet with them as well. And then students, I meet with student leaders one-on-one. I go to the Student Bar Association meeting to talk about what's on people's minds. When there are causes for concern, I will kind of reach out to different groups to kind of hear what's on their mind. And if people are unhappy about something, my door is always open. So, that's what I do to kind of stay in touch with people. At the same time, uh, because we're of the size that we are, we have an administrative structure that's really much more like a liberal arts college than most law schools. I have a vice dean who's really our provost, and she supervises all of the academic associate deans. So I have a faculty member who's the associate dean for graduate programs, and another for curriculum, and another for our centers and institutes, and another for um, careers, another for experiential learning, and they all report to our vice dean, so who's really our provost. So again, I think that's not something that is typical among law schools, but I think it's important for a school of this size. And that also allows me to focus in on both strategy and fundraising and on personal contacts, because it's less time on day-to-day administration.
So would it be fair to say that most of your days are spent with meetings?
Uh, yes, meetings of different types,
Yeah,
but a lot of it is though on fundraising.
yeah.
So if a new building is $100 million,
Yeah.
I have to fundraise. So at this point, we're at 62. And so I normally spend a lot of my time fundraising, but during this period, as I'm trying to raise $100 million, I focus even more on fundraising. When I go to alumni group, I will tell them for me to raise $100 million by June 30th, 2025, I need to raise $100,000 a day. So if I'm not getting $100,000 from this reception, it's
Yeah.
been a bad day. So that's a real focus. And
Yeah, go ahead. I was just going to say, take 30 seconds to give a pitch to our listeners in case anybody might be interested in contributing to this effort. What do you
well,
have to
it's
say?
I think you basically have heard the larger version of it, but we're in Washington, D.C. We have the best experiential program in the country, and we have extraordinary traditional teachers. And we need a classroom, we need buildings that make it possible to draw on those amazing strengths and to provide our students with the education they deserve. And it's going to be really extraordinary. I would also say it's a beautiful building. If you look on our website, you'll see it's designed by Paycobb, which is I.M. Pei's architectural firm. So I.M. Pei passed away a few years ago, and his protege is a woman whose name is Yvonne Seto. And Yvonne designed the building. She also designed the Fordham building, and she's really remarkably gifted. She started, Pei was her mentor. One of her first projects was working with him on the Louvre and the pyramid at the Louvre. So it is a gorgeous, gorgeous building. So I hope you look at our website, and anybody who wants to contribute, I would be more than delighted to talk to them.
Great. Uh, is it a coincidence that you were dean at both schools when this remarkable firm was used?
Uh, Well, when I was at Fordham, we went through and we talked to probably 8 leading architectural firms, and they each made presentations. And I thought PACOB was really hands down the best. And the Fordham building was designed by Yvonne and Harry Cobb, who was, IM Pay's co-founder of the firm. And I think it's a remarkable building. I was actually not part of the selection process here because I was so impressed with PACOB, but I didn't want to be leaning into, them as our pick. So we had a very multi-stage process, and they went from, again, 8 firms to 2 firms, and then we had a meeting, and the weight of the meeting was people were excited by PACOB and wanted to retain them. So I didn't talk until it was clear that PACOB was the firm that people were supporting. So
Yeah.
I think everybody loves the Fordham building. And again, I think this is it's dazzling. But I consciously, I didn't want to weigh in early because I didn't want to make it look like I was just pushing for a firm that I had ties with.
How do you keep meetings fun if all your days are spent with a multitude of meetings? Fun for yourself.
Uh, yeah, I always think Nicholas Katzenbach, who was Attorney General of the United States after Bobby Kennedy, wrote his autobiography, and it's called "Some of It Was Fun." And so that's probably how I feel. Like, some of it was fun, not all of it was fun, but it's all important. And so that's really what's sustaining to me. I mean, it's the things that you talked about in the introduction are really important to me. The increase in experiential education, the building community, the making of this a more inclusive space, the focus on technology, the expansion of financial aid. These are all things that are important to me. And I wouldn't say it's not always fun, kind of moving things forward, but it's always reaffirming and valuable. And then I like the people I'm working with. So that's a great, that's a real joy.
Is your vision of the law school and the new buildings to be able to draw the community in Georgetown, not just to be able for them to look in and see what's going on, but for them to be part of what's going on at the law school?
I mean, we hope that. We have, well, first of all, I think the clinics are really part of an outreach to the community. We actually our clinics are the biggest public interest entity in Washington, D.C. So we have 19 clinics, and the work that they do in the community is absolutely remarkable. And it ranges from community empowerment to representing people in criminal defense clinics, intellectual property clinics. It's really remarkable outreach to the community, and the building will make that possible. I think we will also have more events that we will welcome the community into because we'll have more space. And then also we very consciously made the coffee bar one that people can come in from the outside. So people will be able to, to be physically in that part of the building, again, to make it not kind of walled off from the rest of the city, but people there, and then we'll have tables outside. The other thing that is very exciting is that this is part of Georgetown's new initiative to build a capital campus. So Georgetown historically has had everything but the law school has been on what we call the hilltop, which is kind of in the heart of Georgetown, the district. And Georgetown is at its core, apart from the law school, a liberal arts school. And then it has a terrific medical school. But it's in some ways, Georgetown is like an Amherst, Georgetown undergraduate is like an Amherst or a Pomona or a Williams with a medical school. And then we've been by ourselves 5 miles away. And one of the challenges of that is law has changed in terms of its nature. So it's no longer just a discrete discipline. So a lawyer should be able to understand business and economics. They should be able to understand policy. They should be able to understand health issues. They should be able to understand climate issues. And we've done a lot of hiring of people who are JD PhDs, so we'll have that expertise, but it's still limited. And so we're now building a capital campus, what we call the capital campus, around the law school that will give us this integration that we've not had before. So in the summer, a public policy school will be opened right next to the law school, which I'm very, very excited about. And in the next couple of years, we'll have a health school, we'll have an environmental school, we'll have a professional studies school, all immediately next to the law school, as well as dorms. So it will be a historic moment, and we're going to have two campuses, one which is a classic liberal arts campus, and the other is really a policy campus engaged with what Washington, D.C. has to offer. So you talked about my time at Fordham. Fordham has similarly two campuses. It's got a beautiful campus in the Bronx, very leafy, classic, great liberal arts school. And then it has a second campus at Lincoln Center. And so students who are interested in law or business or entertainment, music, that's where they go. So in some ways, the Fordham model of two campuses with different focuses is what we're building at Georgetown.
And in terms of curriculum, are we expecting to see cross-disciplinary courses, students from different departments being able to take each other's courses or have classes together? Does it mean in terms of centers comprising of faculties from different schools?
Yes, no, that's exactly right. So starting on the centers, which I think is very important, the first cross-campus building that we built is also right next to the law school and right next to the public policy school. And it's a building of centers. And so it's centers from the law school, from the main campus, and from the medical school. And the idea is to help people with different perspectives work together. So again, you talked about technology. The top three floors are what we call tech and society. So it's a combination of law school faculty who are tech focused, three of our tech clinics. We have a privacy center, we have a larger technology institute. But then also in this space are people from the main campus who are focused on the ethics of AI, or who are focused in on kind of business questions or communications questions in the technology space. So for the first time, they're all there, they're working together, and that's a model for what we hope to see moving forward, but it really starts with the centers and institutes. Students will be able to take classes so that you'll be able to, a law student will be able to take a public policy class, a public policy student will be able to take a law class, which is very exciting. And we'll have more joint degree programs. So all of these kind of interactions will proceed in important ways.
So the motto of the school, as I mentioned in introduction, is law is but the means, justice is the end. What does that mean to you?
Well, it means that we're educating people who are focused on making a difference in the world and making it a more just place. So we have students who are going to follow all different paths. Some of them are going to go into government, some of them work for nonprofits, corporations, big law, small law. They're going to follow all different paths. But I think because of the training they receive here, they have a core commitment to making a difference in the world and to making it a better place and a more just place. That it's not all just about them. And so, so we do things like, first of all, we talk about that all the time. When I talk to admitted students, when I talk to first-year students, one of the points I make is that this is our motto. Law is what the means, justice is the end. So I think that I want that to be front and center as they're thinking through, what does it mean to be a lawyer? So it's very important just to have that conversation. I think the fact that we have the best experiential programs reflects this dedication to service and you're teaching people how to serve in very powerful ways. But it's part of the conversation in every class. So whether it's tax or corporations or contracts or constitutional law, I think there's an ethos that's different. And again, it's not political. It's not that it has a political ideology, or it's not that people are going to go out and all be, public defenders or prosecutors. But first of all, the faculty members who come here are drawn by the mission. And you talked about all the faculty members we hire. People come here rather than another school because they want to be in Washington, D.C., and they want to have an impact. If you're interested in bankruptcy law, you're right down the street from the Hill. You can have an impact. The White House is here. If you're interested in tax, the IRS is here. So we both have faculty members and students who pick Georgetown because of the impact that you have when you're in Washington, D.C. And again, I think the ethos of the place, permeates everything. So, if you look, for example, at the members of Congress or the Senate, we have a disproportionate number of people in the Congress and the Senate. And I think it's because they have this orientation from day one. But again, you see it in leaders of the bar in every dimension. Kind of the leaders of the biggest firms and U.S. attorneys. We have 3 U.S. attorneys in the class of 2009, which is amazing. So again, I think because of who's drawn to be at Georgetown, because we talk about it, and because it informs the curriculum, and because we have a great experiential program, that all leads to, people are going to make a difference. Another thing that I've done is very much focused in on creating opportunities to have public service careers. So one of the challenges of public service careers is that the first job is very hard. If you go to work for a big firm, the idea is you'll take a couple of years to learn how to be a lawyer. They'll bill you out, but they don't really depend on you in a big way. Whereas in a small litigating agency, whether it's public defender or a prosecutor or really anything where people are in court, they really depend on you on day one. And so they're hesitant to hire recent law school graduates. So for a lot of people, this is the kind of career that they want, but the first job is hard to get. So we've created a program of that are really public-private partnerships. So we will commit $25,000 a year for the first year if people go to a government agency or a nonprofit, and they match the salary for a year. And so that gives somebody a year working for the DC Attorney General's office, for example, and they get practical experience, and then that launches their careers. So, and we've had as many 10% of the class doing that, and it's a real reason why for a lot of people they come to Georgetown.
And that's a big denominator, 10% of an incoming cohort, and you're committing $25,000 for each of them for
Yeah,
that.
no, it's a huge commitment. It's a huge commitment, but it really kind of for me, it comes out of my personal experience that I went to law school, I did well, I clerked, and I wanted a public interest job. And I have to say, I found it very hard to find that first job. And I think it was really, after my clerkship, it was really January before I started working. And it was, with really strong credentials. So I know how hard it is to get that first public interest job. So that's the reason why, it's important to me to create those resources to make it possible for people to pursue the kind of career that they want to pursue.
Is it true that you left Harvard for Yale because of your belief in public interest work?
Yeah, no, I think, Harvard was, for me, when I was there, was very corporate. It really did not have kind of the public interest commitment that I thought Yale did. So that's why I transferred, and it was the right fit for me. So, uh, I think there were a lot of people who were, again, they've done all different kinds of things in their careers, but they had this sense that they had an obligation to make a difference. And so I felt that Yale was a supportive environment in a way that Harvard was not.
And thanks to your own experience, a whole generation of students, lawyers to be at Georgetown can now benefit from that.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you. And the other thing that, if there are any law students or prospective law students that people are not often aware of, is the federal government has a very generous loan forgiveness program for people who enter public interest careers. So you could have, regardless of the size of your debt, if you, for example, go to work for, again, a public defender or a prosecutor, and let's say you're earning $50,000 a year, uh, the federal government program caps your loan repayment at about 8% of your income. So again, regardless of the debt that you have, let's say you're earning $50,000, you only have to pay $4,000 a year in loan repayment. And at Georgetown and some other schools, we will pay the $4,000. So, you graduate from law school, you have a lot of debt, but you want to be a public defender or a prosecutor. You go to work, and again, you're earning $50,000. Government says you only have to pay $4,000, and we pay the $4,000. And then after 10 years, the federal government forgives your loan. So again, the reason why we commit the money is because we think it's important that people be able to, if this is the career path that they want to follow, we want to make it possible for them to follow. And again, I think so this ties in with the support for public interest fellowships when people leave the law school.
And I imagine that something like that, with all these tremendous commitment, of financial aid and so on, it's not something that you could do in a short amount of time. You're now in your third term as dean. Talk about how your first term differed from your second term and your third term as dean.
I think, so when I came in 2010, I think there were two things that really struck me. One is that the financial aid wasn't where it should be, and that's really because historically Jesuit universities didn't do fundraising. And that's Fordham was that way, Georgetown was that way, Boston College was that way. So I started college in 1975, and at that point they were all really in trouble. So Georgetown, for example, its endowment was $30 million at a time in which at Harvard or Yale, the endowment was $1 billion. Boston College almost closed. So that's a product of the history of not doing fundraising. So over the time, Fordham and Georgetown started to do more fundraising, but because they were starting from so far behind, financial aid when I came in was really not at all where it should be, particularly for a school that values inclusion, that actually started as an evening school so that people who worked could go to law school. We're the only top school that started as an evening school. But it was important to me to increase the financial aid. So that has been a real focus kind of all the way through. But that's a product of conversations over time. Fundraising is really about building relationships. It's not about making a great pitch and then somebody who you don't have a relationship with says, okay, I'm going to give you X million dollars. So the kind of the focus on fundraising has been a through line. The focus on experiential education has also been a through line. When I came in, it wasn't that long. Actually, when I was at the Department of Justice at the end of the Clinton administration, I worked in the Office of Legal Counsel, and I was in charge of kind of criminal law questions and some constitutional law questions. And what really struck me was the way in which um, intellectual property and the changes in technology were driving legal issues in a way that people didn't realize, and that we needed to focus on that. So at Fordham, that was a big focus of mine, and there were people who were already in that area who were great. So Daryl, you and I, before we started, were talking about Hugh Hansen, who was really a visionary in terms of international intellectual property, or Joel Reidenberg, who was one of the first people to anywhere to focus on data privacy and was really a genius. So at Fordham, I built on that. And then when I came to Georgetown, again, there was a great strength here, but we've really kind of focused on it. And that's why we came to have 3 clinics and 16 faculty members and a technology institute. So that again has really been kind of a through line. So financial aid, experiential education has been important to me all the way through, building on Georgetown's great strength, technology. I think that, as I've gotten deeper into kind of my tenure, the last few years, we had to grapple with the pandemic. So that was not part of a larger plan. We didn't anticipate the pandemic, but we had to navigate through the pandemic and the challenges that it presented, both in terms of educational opportunity, but also supporting for the students. And then we've continued with that. We have more, we have great counseling, both in terms of kind of counselors who students can go to on campus, but we've also created the opportunities to do talk to psychologists, through a web service, because this is a point in which just the challenges that people are facing are so great. And then I think the last few years, I've been very focused on the new building and building for that. And then I think the other challenge that we're all facing in legal education and academia now is striking the right balance between free speech and academic discourse, but also supporting our students. So I think everybody, has seen kind of the conflicts of this fall. And, we've had, we at Georgetown Law, like so many schools, have had real challenges, over the past few years. So one of the things that we're focused on now, moving forward, is finding ways for people to listen to each other and understand that there are important opinions that they should take into account, even though they disagree with.
Can I ask you just quickly how you managed to avert the same kind of very front page controversies that you see in other institutions at Georgetown? Nobody's reporting on protests or things like that at Georgetown. It's all been fairly quiet. How did you manage that?
Well, I mean, first of all, I just want to say, it's something that you have to really be focused on every day. And you don't want to, I certainly don't want to be in a position to say, we figured it out and we're not going to have any issues, because you never know what's going to, these are these are difficult issues and people feel very strongly about them, and you can't anticipate what's going to happen. I think, I think there are a couple of things that we've done that have been very helpful. Outreach to the students and listening to them and talking to them. So whether it's me or a dean of students, or we have a fabulous associate dean for inclusion and a fabulous chief diversity officer, have had just a lot of meetings talking to students and listening to them, from different, every different perspective, Muslim students, Jewish students, people who are pro-Palestinian and people who are deeply committed to Israel, talking to them. I think that's important. That's made a difference. And I have to say that the team that we have here is really exceptional. I'm very fortunate that they're as thoughtful and as engaged as they are. We're also doing things like we have actually a great campus ministry office, and they're very focused on kind of bringing together people from different faiths to talk. And I think that has also been really, really important. It's a model not just for kind of the current crisis, um, but for moving forward. We just had, and again, this was done through our campus ministry office. There was a program together on yesterday on political polarization, and essentially what the organizing principle was, there was a room full of tables of about 7, and they had intentionally put together people with different perspectives, and the idea was to get them to talk over the course of the day. And it started with a great deal of tension, and at the end of the day there was just extraordinary good feeling in the room. So we're trying to think through models that in which people feel comfortable talking to each other. And again, we have had our challenges, over the past few years, and things that have really been kind of high-profile incidents. But our focus now, moving forward, is trying to promote conversations and dialogue and listening. But I wouldn't say that that we have the right mixture. But I do think we have a terrific team, and I'm really very proud of them.
I'm sure you've got many fans on campus just for all the very thoughtful policies that you've put in place. So I should ask this on behalf of all your fans.
Mhm.
Is are you facing a term limit? Could it could you have a fourth term?
I could have a fourth term. I could have a fourth term. So
Would you
that's
consider it?
that's the process of thinking through now. I've got a year and a half, so I've got a little time.
Good. You're also executive vice president. Is that different from being dean, and what does that mean if it's different?
So Georgetown University has a unique administrative structure. So typically, the law school dean reports to the provost, who reports to the president, and that's the norm. So at Fordham, for example, I reported to, it's actually then the executive vice president for academic affairs, who reported to the president. Georgetown has a model in which there are essentially 3 academic leaders. So I report to the president, the provost reports to the president, and the executive vice president for the medical school reports to the president. Uh, so the executive vice president of the medical school, the School of Health, the School of Nursing, and the medical school all report to him, and he reports to the president. And we really work together also as a team. So we meet together actually with the chief operating officer of the university and the president's chief of staff. That's the first meeting of every week. And so we talk through the issues and then tee them up for the president. So it's a unique model. And I think it's a valuable model, particularly given our size. And the other unique dimension about Georgetown, and this is very much in the weeds, is that we have historically been like our own campus. So facilities, you talked about the gym, security, IT, all report to me rather than to somebody kind of outside of the law school. And I think that has made a real difference. I think it has helped make people responsive. And there are just so many things that are different at a law school that it's just very helpful to have that kind of independent structure. So, for example, blind grading. You don't do blind grading at a college. You need to have a software system for your registrar's office that does blind grading. So that's just an example, but you could come up with many others in which I think this is really a very valuable structure.
And it sounds almost like you are in a standalone law school.
Yeah, I mean, so in some ways we are, uh, but again, kind of under the guidance, but
And you are the same level in terms of the hierarchy reporting structure as the provost.
right, right. So, and I have to say that, so that Georgetown has had that model for, I think, 50 years, and it has worked very well. So
So does the provost oversee the law school in any way?
no, no. So the provost, so the provost oversees like the business school, the college, um, School of Continuing Studies. So they're all under his area, but he has no supervision of the law school. But we do very much work as a team. The three academic leaders, we talk all the time. And again, I think that's real value, and I would encourage other schools, particularly ones that have large law schools, to think about that.
Thanks. I want to give some time for you to talk about your scholarship and your teaching, because what's remarkable about how you spend your time is, in addition to all the many initiatives you put forth as dean, you are also teaching, and you also finding time to do scholarship. And as I mentioned in the introduction, you have a book
Mhm.
that's coming out. So talk about these things and what people should know about your other roles at the law school.
So the teaching, over the course of my career, I've taught a great range of courses. I've taught property and criminal law and intellectual property and land use, because I think it's very valuable as a professor to teach the courses, because you really learn them in depth and you have a breadth of understanding, which is very valuable. Uh, at Georgetown, I haven't been able to do first year courses, partly because I travel so much. But I've done 3 courses. I've done legal justice, which is a first year course that is really about legal philosophy. I've done a course on drafting the Constitution, and that's been a co-taught course with another legal historian. And I've done a course. We have a business skills program, and I've done the capstone course with a faculty member who's really an extraordinary depth on business skills. So I think it's important to be in the classroom. It's important that you have students who see you as a faculty member as opposed to just an administrator. So that's the scholarship piece. I'm actually not teaching this year because I'm spending so much time on the road doing the fundraising, but it's important to me to teach. And it's important to me to do scholarship. I want to show to the faculty how much I value it. And part of the way that you show faculty that you value scholarship is by doing it. And so I've written a fair amount during my tenure as dean at Fordham and Georgetown. My current book, which I'm very excited about, and I hope all the viewers of your podcast will buy, is called Fathers of the Constitution. So everybody thinks about James Madison as the father of the Constitution, and that's really very much influenced the Supreme Court, particularly as the Supreme Court has become originalist. So Madison had a concept of the Constitution in which states were powerful, in which Congress was comparatively weak. And so that has influenced, many leading Supreme Court decisions. It's also influencing the turn against the administrative state right now. So we're seeing the power of Madison as the father of the Constitution. But the first thesis of the book is that he wasn't the father of the Constitution, that there were actually 2 people at the Constitutional Convention who nobody knows, James Wilson and Gouverneur Morris, who actually were more important in the drafting of the Constitution than Madison. They spoke more on the convention floor. They really wrote the Constitution. So there were 2 drafting committees of the Constitution. One was the Committee of Detail, and Wilson was the nationalist on the Committee of Detail. And then the Committee of Style was the polished the Constitution, but it actually made very substantive changes. And Gouverneur Morris was the drafter of the Committee of Style. So much of the Constitution was done through those 2 committees. So for example, the preamble is a product of those 2 committees. Article 1, Article 2, Article 3 is a product of those committees. It's quite extraordinary, the changes that they made. And Wilson and Morris had a different vision of the Constitution than Madison. They were very pro-executive. They were wanted to create a powerful Congress. They were both, not big supporters of states. Wilson was the most pro-democratic person at the convention. He was really the only person who thought everybody should have a voice. Everybody being white men, so limited, but within the world in which he operated, it was uniquely expansive. And Morris was the biggest critic of slavery at the convention, denounced slavery in the most powerful terms. So the first part of the book is essentially how Morris and Wilson won the battle over what the Constitution says. And when the convention ended, Madison was distraught because his vision had not been reflected in the final Constitution. So that's the first part of the book. And the second is how Wilson and Morris, having won the battle over what the Constitution's text is, over the following 50 years, the remainder of his life, Madison won the battle over what that text was understood to mean. So, he had a take on the Constitution. He really pushed it. He wrote the notes that everybody relies on. And so it's about the way in which he told the story that we now accept, even though it's not what actually happened. So that's the book. They're fascinating characters. Wilson was an immigrant who really came from nothing. He was a legal genius, but he was also a reckless speculator. And so at the end of his life, while he's on the Supreme Court, he has extraordinary debts. There's a economic recession, and his creditors pursue him. And one of them ultimately captures him, and he's placed under house arrest while he's on the Supreme Court. And he dies of pneumonia under house arrest over a bar. It's, and part of the reason why we don't celebrate Wilson is because it's a bad story. It's not a pantheon story. And Morris is colorful. He's vibrant. He's funny. Actually, all of our statues of Washington are actually Morris's body, which nobody knows. So, but he's ambassador to France when the Washington statue that everything is modeled on was being constructed. And Houdin, who was the sculptor, knew that they were roughly the same size. So Morris would go to his studio, and his body is, the Washington statue has Morris's body everywhere. So the one that's in the Capitol or in the Convention Center in Philadelphia, in Richmond, Morris's body. He was a serial philanderer, which really kind of upset a lot of people at what was in many ways a puritanical time. He was funny. And then at the end of his life, he married a woman who had been accused of committing 2 murders. So very colorful, totally forgotten. And again, I think it's because he's not the kind of person that we put in the pantheon.
And all this is in your book.
All this is in my book. So you got to read it.
I hope you're going to consider a book tour at some point, and we'd love to have you come over and give that talk about the book.
I would be delighted. And I would also, if you want to look at my chair talk, is available on YouTube when I became the Dean Professor of Law, and it's a talk about the dishonest scrivener, who is Governor Morris, and it's available on YouTube. So if people want more detail, eventually I want you to buy the book, but for right now you can see a lot of this on YouTube if you look up Treanor and Dishonest Scrivener.
Great. We are coming up on the hour, so one final quick question for you. What do you do outside of work, and how does it help inform your role as a leader?
That's a very good question. I mean, I obviously do a lot of reading and a lot of scholarship. That's very important to me. Family is very important to me. I have really 2 extraordinary children, both of whom are now in New York, and one's 26 and 28, and so it's they're very wonderful. That's a great joy. I have a remarkable wife. She's the love of my life, and it's very fortunate for me to be with her. So family is very important to me. And then in terms of hobbies, tennis, and try to do right now phases to keep in shape. In addition to the trainer, I do long runs very slowly. So I've done the Paris Marathon twice in recent years, and I'm going to do, I hope, the next Paris Marathon as well. So as well as kind of shorter races. So that's my outside activities.
Very impressive. And this is Paris, as you actually fly to Paris for the marathon.
Actually fly to Paris. My daughter, who is a remarkable athlete, uh, said to me, I'd always thought about running the marathon. And she said to me about 5 years ago, she said, Dad, it doesn't get easier with the passage of time. And I said, all right, I will run a marathon if you'll run with me. And she said, deal. And I said, so let's run the Potomac Marathon. So there's this great marathon along the Potomac Canal. And she said, I will run with you if it's the Paris Marathon. So that was the deal we struck. So we went over and she ran with me. No, she didn't actually run with me. If you take her time and you double it, she just beat me. And she was actually the fastest American woman and in her first marathon and the fastest amateur. So she's really a
Very
remarkably
impressive.
runner. And my son also ran with me, which was particularly impressive because he did literally no training. And that rarely happens that you're able to run 26 miles without
Good
ever having
genes.
trained. Good gene. He and I crossed the finish line hand in hand, 26.2 miles after we started. And again, if you took my daughter's time and doubled it, she would have just beat the two of us.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again for taking the time to do this, for all that you do for the legal community at Georgetown and beyond. Look forward to connecting with you again before too long.
Well, I will look forward to seeing you soon. And again, Daryl, I really applaud you for this initiative and for all you're doing. It's an honor to be part of it. Take care.
Thank you.